G'day, back again. What I wanted to do in this reading was talk about this card, the Three of Cups that keeps turning up, women celebrating. Now in normal readings, it can be literally three women celebrating or any number of women celebrating, but it also has much broader applications regarding abundance and joy and fertility, etc., etc. But it does keep coming up in readings. And so I have been asked, and I'm happy to do this, this reading is dedicated to what's going on with women in America under the Trump regime. And obviously it is galvanizing women, and I think it's a very interesting movement, not just the Me Too movement, but in a broader sense. So I would like to see what's going on with that. So have a closer look, the Three of Cups. So I'm going to make it the signifying card. Then I'm going to do a layered reading. We're looking at the issues for women, Republican women, Democratic women, and women generally. So let's see what comes up in that context. All right. So women in America, women in America, women in America. I think it's a very, very powerful time, and it often happens when things are very dire and certain rights and privileges are taken from you or at risk of being taken from you. It's then that people wake up and really start to smell the roses, so to speak. And as someone who's been around the block quite a few times in my life, I've seen a lot of progress on women's issues, but I've also seen a lot of growth, particularly, in the last 10 years, about pushing women back into the home, back into the kitchen. All right, so let's see what's happening. Women in America. All right, the card that fell out, beautiful. The Moon, the ultimate female card. Let's put my glasses on, helps me think, don't ask why. Okay, so the Moon, feminine energy, intuition. Oh, it's alive. It's also about deep hidden knowledge, but it can also be about deceit. It can be about madness. We've talked about it in other contexts before, in the Trump White House, the howling at the moon, the twin pillars of wisdom. But it's the ultimate female card, feminine energy. So here we go with that. All right, so the first column here is about the fundamental issues, the issue. So we had the Moon, which I just described, feminine energy. What's acting around that? Well, would you be surprised to note that you have the King of Swords? So forgetting Stephen Miller now, if you're watching these videos together, we're moving on, it's a new reading. The King of Swords is patriarchal male energy, the sword of domination, right? The sword of the mind, men controlling the mind, right? Men controlling, generally, controlling the discourse on what is happening. And that's why, if you cast your mind back, those of you who have been following me for a while, in a previous reading, I think it was on the Democratic Party, as a feminist, I also believe it's really, really important that men are brought on this journey, that it shouldn't be a separatist movement, that it's really important for men to fundamentally, and it's happening more and more, particularly with younger men who just say, Why does my sister earn less than I do? Why can't she play at a high-level sport and be paid what I'd get paid if I was a top basketballer or baseballer or whatever? So I think that there's a cultural and generational change, and not a minute too soon. But also I do believe generally men have to be brought on the journey and want to be on the journey. And I think it started with men in the labour ward, and that was several decades ago now. Because in my mother's generation, you wouldn't dream of having a man in the labour ward. Their job was to go out and drink scotch or whatever your cultural practice was until the baby was born. And just the fact that men are now in the labour ward says a lot. So men are changing. They had to change. They need to change more. So I think younger men, it's almost automatic, even though they've got a lot of cultural pressure. And I'll go to the next card here, a lot of cultural pressure to behave in a primitive, phallic fashion. So I'm not just saying anyone under 40 is naturally different and wonderful and will know where the vacuum cleaner lives and volunteer to clean the toilet without being asked. No, there's still a way to go. As someone famously said, there's nothing more erotic than seeing a man with a vacuum cleaner. And symbolically, little joke about men and housework. But these two cards here in the general section are saying these are the cards of the patriarchy, and by that I mean what is seen as normal, what isn't. So still, if someone has a baby, it's much more likely that the woman stays at home with the baby, and when the child does go into some sort of kindy or care, somehow it tends to come out of the woman's wage, and so forth. So I'm a sociologist, so we deal in structural issues. So a structural issue, and I see this with students a lot, is, well, I earn less than him, so it makes more sense for him to go back to work than me. Do you see the conundrum? So because women are paid less, therefore it makes more sense. So it reinforces a cultural norm that only women can look after babies, and so forth. So every ad and, you know, so much of what we see in terms of conventional television or social media still reinforces this. Am I thin enough? Am I beautiful enough? No. Oh, you know. So there's all the stuff around the body. There's a long, 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 long way to go. And this is why. Okay. All right. So now, back to the cards. Republican women. Is there any movement in their thinking? Well, the first two cards are money. Money cards. It's a funny thing that you have Republican women who actually, you needn't go further than Ivanka, who support women's rights and women to go back to work and women to be looked after in the workplace and women in the workplace, and it's all about money and the family. And then you've got like a class division where that's not as common amongst working class families who, you know, where people just have to go to work because otherwise, you know, you're not going to be able to pay the rent, the mortgage, the food, the bills, and the basic stuff. So there's this altruistic sort of thing about middle class and upper class Republican women who support these issues. Anyway, the first card, the Seven of Pentacles, is the Harvest card. Have I got enough? So I think there are educated Republicans who are very keen to have their daughters educated so they will be financially independent, and that is a goal of that certain type of conservatism where they will certainly educate their daughters as much as their sons and would be very proud of their daughters if they become doctors and lawyers and so forth. But there's real class issues operating here that I'm picking up. Maybe I can't take off my sociologist hat, but I see that as a class division in Republican women. So we'll see. The second card, wealth and family money and intergenerational money. So again, if you look at conservatism at its most basic level, which is make families strong. Like Democrats don't want strong families, you know. Like people should work hard and save money and use it wisely, as if working class families don't do an amazing job with a lot less money. So they dominate this moral space of hard work equals money equals security. Well, I'm sorry, someone who goes out at 4 in the morning to clean on a very low wage every day of the year is working really hard. And, you know, you might work long hours promoting your cosmetic line or some bloody thing, but look, what is hard work really? Okay, the world. I think Republican women now we're dealing with here. I think Republican women, again, there's this differential, those who are educated and those who aren't. So if you look at the right-wing evangelical, evangelist sort of strongholds, without college degrees, the Trump voters, the Trump supporters, they have much more conventional gender dynamics in the family and in the community. Those with education tend to be much more broad-minded, at least about most social issues. They might not come at a woman's right to abortion, but they tend to be more gay-friendly or less traumatised by, you know, the slightest hiccup in the 19th century norms of the evangelicals. So there's a spread in the Republican Party, just as there is in any party. Okay, so the world. Here we have the world. And I think particularly those with education are more influenced by what's happening in the world, changes for women in other countries. They would expect decent working conditions if they have an education. If they don't have an education, I think the world card actually influences them in the opposite way and forces them to hunker down. They might say our man's an idiot and an imbecile, but he's our guy. So I think any time they see anything from the rest of the world, which is rare and only filtered through Fox News and regurgitated, a very unpleasant thing, it has the opposite effect. So that's how I'm seeing Republican women. Democratic women here. Yeah, this is interesting. They can see what's happening. Women have been blindfolded. They have had their wings clipped. They are surrounded by the patriarchal swords. They can see it, and they know it, and they're sick of it. Okay? They're really sick of it. And this is coming out in the fact that I was just seeing recently, there's something like 400 women going for office. This is unprecedented in the next huge electoral cycle. Okay. Conflict. This doesn't come without conflict. So by conflict here, I am reading this as conflict within the Democratic Party. How far do they push the women card? I guess some are saying let's go all the way and have as many female representatives as we can, and others going, oh, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, we need skilled people. That sort of conflict within the party. It could also be conflict within families, because if all these women are going to step forward for public office, that might be at quite a local level. We have local councils in Australia at this minute. I can't think of what the equivalent is in the US. So at your very local borough level, I suppose you'd call it, or regional level. And that's where a lot of political work gets done. I can see not only women going for higher jobs, but a lot more there. That can lead to conflicts in families. Okay, because suddenly mum's not home all the time, the wife isn't totally available all the time. It could be conflict in that sense, in a fundamental sense of the structural issues that don't support women making this sort of commitment. So I see this as very active. They've identified the issue and they're fighting for this issue. The Magician card. I love that. I think in this context, I think this is possibly the most positive card you could see here. The Magician, the Alchemist, the ability to transform from, oh, you can have a good job, but only until you have a baby, and then you've got a 5-year hole in your CV, and if you've got 2 or 3 kids, that's a 12-year hole in your CV, and you can't get ahead, and all the other issues that are facing women, or low-income women who don't have any conditions at all. If you don't turn up for work, see you later. No paid maternity leave, that's just simply fantasy land, who have their wings clipped. I think this is the opposite of that. This is transforming all that and using this massive movement, going back to our key signifier, the massive celebration of women. This is converting this negative energy, this aggressive energy into pure power. Now, I admit that might be wishful thinking on my behalf, but I actually think it's transformative. That's the key word, and certainly if nothing else, it's transformative. We've already experienced that with the Trump year. So, oh, I love that. All right, so looking at this outcome here, I'm running out of space, so let me just move these over. This is very interesting. As an obstacle, we still have the King of Pentacles. Men earn more money than women. There are more wealthy men than wealthy women. Men and money, men and power, right? This is men controlling the discourse and the news. This is men controlling with the penis. This is men controlling with money. Running away with the goodies, the rip-off card. So putting pressure on women, ripping off the power and energy and skills and talent of women. Hello, Harvey Weinstein. But here we have the Queen of Pentacles. So this is women reclaiming their power, women reclaiming it through money. But I just don't think that means, oh, rich women, although I think that's important to some extent. You need powerful, famous, rich women to front campaigns and things. But it's also, it's Earth, it's the Earth Mother. Not in the same way as the Empress, but Pentacles represent Earth, solidity, security. Women use money differently. Now, I know there have been studies done that if the male in the household is a gambler, the family will be badly affected by that. But at the end of the day, the wife or the partner or whatever could still go to her sister and go, look, he's blown his wage, I need to feed 3 kids, blah, 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 that it'd be looked after. If women take to gambling, then the family is truly gone. So although we've all been brought up with a version of the conventional nuclear family, mum, dad and the kids, a strong mother will always raise a good family, whether she's partnered or not. So we need to support women in being able to do that, right? So I think this is reclaiming vintage power, if you like, deeply traditional power of women in the family, in the street, in the community, and in the government. I'm looking forward to those midterms. It'll be really interesting. There are so many women going to be visible there. Thank you, everyone. I enjoyed that reading. I hope you did. Bye from Oz.